wasn't so bad back in the day. We've been out there since, and it changed a lot. It was pretty it was okay for us back then. We did meet a lot of awesome people. Yeah, I don't think nowadays it's something,
Attention, everybody. I'd like to start the meeting. Welcome, everybody. This is Public Works meeting for March 31st, 2021. First item on our agenda is open forum. Does anybody have an item that is not on the agenda? Seeing nothing, we'll move on to our next item. We have an applicant for our open seat on our Public Works Committee, Cam Dorian. Cam, if you'd like to step up. Maybe introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Cam Dorian. Lived in Nisswa for 23 years. Married to Pam, who is the chamber president. I'm sure most people know her. We have two kids, a senior and a sophomore, that go to Pequot.
Nice. Any of you gentlemen have a question for Cam based on his application or anything you'd like to know?
you got a background in construction.
I do. Yeah, I built wastewater treatment plants in California for 10 years. I built everything from homes to grain bins and everything in between. So a lot of construction experience. And right now I own my own business. I do commercial refrigeration, HVAC.
Nice.
Yep.
And obviously the night is the evening that we have these meetings on. You'll have no problem making
Not a
those.
problem. Nope.
And you're here year round, not seasonal.
Yep, year round.
Could you explain why you want to be on the committee for the group?
Well, I've lived here for 23 years.
Okay.
And I just felt it's time to do my part to help and just be part of the city of Nisswa.
Okay.
We absolutely love it here. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll die here, you know.
Okay.
I just want to do just be involved with the city.
All right. Anybody else have any comments or questions for Cam? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to welcome Cam onto our committee? Second? All in favor? Opposed? Welcome.
Thank you.
If you want to sit, you can have a chair.
The hot seat.
Our next item, as maybe a few of you are aware, our current community recycling site behind the fire hall, there's some changes going on with that, funding from the county and so forth, and possibly a need to expand that some. And we're currently looking at moving that out to our wastewater treatment site. There's a concept map that's shown on the wall there, and John will be pulling that up here in a minute for you to take a look at on the screen. It might be a little hard to see. There we go. So this area right here would replace what you're familiar with out behind the fire hall. This is Lower Roy Lake Road. And, this is the road that currently goes into our gravel pit area, so that's what it's complete. Basically, we're going to have that in a place for police impounds. There'll be a chain link fence that separates the city areas from the areas that we're going to allow public into. We're going to be accepting yard clippings, brush and trees, and we will probably, with the power company, to give wood chips available at some point. The site will probably be gated time to time, we have problems with contamination or need to do maintenance on the site, and so we need to close that. There'll probably be regular hours available for the site once it's moved. We are allowing for more room, more bins, easier to get to them. We're planning on, if there's snow events, that we'll close the site briefly while we clean the snow away. To make that all a lot easier for us and better for you to use. We're planning on paving coming in, and then the pad, obviously, for the bins. This area here would remain gravel. Any questions? Anybody have any questions or thoughts on what you see, or?
Well, we know it has to move. The recycle area has to move, right?
Eventually it does.
Mhm.
We certainly will be there through 2021.
Mhm.
And it's possible we will remain behind the fire hall even into 2022. Going past that, it will likely have to move somewhere, and right now our preliminary concept is to put it out in the gravel pit. The city doesn't currently own a piece of property large enough to build this facility on, other than this. Yeah, there are some opportunities for cost sharing possibly with the county. They haven't committed to anything yet, or we haven't had any formal talks, but we will probably approach them looking to cost share both on the operation and the construction of this site.
Right.
It will be lit, and there will be security cameras. Mostly to catch people who are vandalizing the site, and for the protection of anybody who's using the site. Any other questions? Tom?
You have a couple of options that you gave us. What are the main issues that between the two?
When I first mentioned that, about a year ago, when we first started, we knew this was going to become an issue. We had talked to W10 about figuring out what the site could look like. And so there's that second map like I showed you. So a lot of things have probably changed since this first idea, but the idea then would be just to put a path very similar in size to what we currently have, put right up against Lower Road. Not sure how it would impact our access road, and also the fact that there's going to be bicycle trail out here too. We've also wanted to provide services for trees and brush, things of that nature. We would need the extra room. We also wanted to be able to gate it off some staff. And I met with Eric Logie and Dre Logie from Waste Partners. We talked about this, the site that I showed you in the previous picture. And right now we're leaning towards the option on that previous picture. Part of the reason we wanted to gate it off, fence it off, is if the county doesn't participate in funding the site, we will need to raise revenue to support it. And so we're kicking around ideas for fees that might support that, maybe seasonal passes or annual passes that are purchased for people who use the site. There will be garbage dump-offs like there are at the current site. There'll be more of it. And that'll be as it is now on your state by day. We will allow transient use. They would likely pick up a pass here at City Hall, and it would either be a daily pass or a weekend pass or an annual pass we want to get. These are all things we have to discuss and get ideas on. But the main reason we're looking at this concept currently, or this soon, ahead of construction, one of the reasons why, is that, as a lot of you know, we're working on our sewer treatment expansion, and part of that, there's chain link fence that goes around this whole site. And so if there's any modifications because of the type of recycling site that we want to add, we want to be aware of them as we're putting up that fence so that we can coordinate those. Any other thoughts or questions? I guess the next steps that we would have would be if there's a concept that you like, or the which I was hoping is the concept that I first showed you. If we want to move forward with that, we would probably turn that over to engineering to figure out the thickness of the pads, costs with it, typical construction time that would be needed, electric service for the lighting, security camera locations, things like that.
Go back to that first picture. What are your plans for disposal of trees, chips?
Well, the chips come from the power company, so what happens is we get them, and what we've been doing up till now is just either using them for the city or making them available to anybody who wants them on a first come, first served basis. And it really depends on storm events we have. Like right now, we don't have any. But in years past, we've had, a mountain of the things. We were able to sell them at one point when they were using them for power generation. They had a value to them. And if you remember the big blowdown storm we had a company that came in and chipped all the trees and brush, hauled it away. And that was done for free because it had a value to it.
Right.
So if a storm like that were to happen now, because that power company is no longer in operation, it would be an expense to the city to grind those up. Chances are we would offer the chips at a nominal cost to residents to try to recapture some of that expense to chip it.
Is that large enough to get a semi in and out of?
It should be. Now, I would say, you see that angle road, the road right to the right that kind of angles off, that could be straightened out to more of a 90-degree angle. There's a little bit of room to be gotten there. This was just a first flush. Some of that will have to be corrected, and that's why we would be looking for some engineering work on that. But at this point, it's just a concept of where, how it would flow a little bit, the general size of it, and what services we would offer.
You had in addition to this drawing, you had another hand drawing. Does that go along with the second, with the original, the second picture that you showed us, the second layout?
I had two 11 by 17s like that.
Yeah,
I just taped those together. That's what you're looking
that's, okay, that's, okay,
Yes.
the whole thing put together, okay.
Yep. I think we would have at least one or two more times of looking at this. If somebody has ideas or concerns, we could certainly modify this in some way.
So I think what we want to do is to either move forward or not make a motion like that.
I think so, yeah. If this is a concept that you are comfortable with, I would ask that you vote to move forward with it, and then we would ask Joe, our engineer, to come back with a proposal to provide the engineering services for this site, and we would probably review that at our next meeting and go forward from there. So I guess with that, is there anybody who would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we move forward.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dill. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is the roundabout at Nokomis and County 77. Mark Hallen with WSN has some history to present with that.
Good afternoon, everyone. And so much history too, just is, the city right now has made application to the state, to the county for potential funding for looking at a roundabout at Nokomis and 77 that's been talked about for years. Going back, actually, Grandview is part of when they did their conversion of their par 3 golf course to all their cottages. They actually did a traffic study, SPAC Engineering completed that. And, that was one of the, items that was talked about in the stacking and stuff. All I wanted is as a city, just, being through with a couple of these with Eric Walsh and the city of Baxter and on County, 48 associated with the school, the new elementary school and stuff. Just offering is, if the city does proceed with that, you're gonna have a decision to make. Are you gonna be the lead or the county or whoever? And I just, and it can work, it works either way. But just, Eric Walsh could probably at our office explain this the better. If you though are the lead, I'll just say ultimately have a little more control of what you end up with for a product and really where you're going with it. So that's all I wanted to just express. There's no decisions tonight or anything, but just as you go forward with that, and and as Jenny said, the city made the applicant, and when you're you're one of 821 or whatever the number was, so it's time will tell. But I just wanted to review with you just quickly as you go forward. If the county comes in and said, well, we'll take care of it, well, they can. But then we won't. But Tom. Now, when they worked on 1377 and the stoplight with the city, I mean, great, they control it and you pretty much sit on the sidelines and watch and they tell you what's happening with it. So just wanted to talk about that a little bit tonight. So as you go forward here, might be 6 months down the road or a year down the road, but as you look at that, and it is also dealing with Grandview Lodge. But just want everybody to remember too, Nokomis is a city street. So I mean, that's the foremost. It is your city street first. Just a business happens to use it a lot for theirs, but that city street also ties in with other city streets and really hundreds of residences that do live in that area. So like I say, it's something you as a city wanna also just have a hand in it as you proceed forward with it. So I'll answer any just questions if you would have, but like I say, right now it's. Right now it's just in the funding stages, long ways away probably.
So at this point, we're just at the Nokomis area then, we're actually looking into like costs from the county as well as the state, was it?
No.
Right now? Or not at all right now?
Okay. Let him answer.
Well, I mean, right now the city has made an application
Right.
to a program the state offers that would go through the county for funding.
Right.
Okay, so Dave Reese did it a few years ago with the city of Jenkins. Okay, and it was when they looked at their backage roads and everything. So they, it's a funding program that the state makes available for local transportation initiatives or improvements. So, like I say, that's what, the city right now, your administrator has made that application to get in line to see if that, because, we'll give Crow Wing County credit. I mean, they have looked at it and they have kind of advanced it forward on their, a few years ago, Tim said it was not even on their 10-year plan. I mean, they had many other intersections that traffic counts and other, accident counts and everything else were a higher priority. But times have changed a little bit, so that's good that, Crow Wing County has kind of moved it up on their priority list to looking at that intersection.
Where is it on their list, Mark? The county, where is it?
Well, right now, what the last we've heard from the county is more, I'll say, about a 5,
they moved it up so they're looking at a 5-year window or less.
Really?
Yeah, that, you know, like I say, that's the last time we heard from, you know, the county on
Yeah.
that.
Good.
So. All right, so Tom, that's everything I have just on that subject.
Everybody on the committee is familiar with the project that Mark is talking about, where it's located and what it would do.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
Our next item on the agenda, Hazelwood Drive and our Joe Hall project. We had, at our last meeting, we had asked WSN to come up with some concepts for a extension of Hazelwood Avenue to County Road 77. Maybe a few of you have seen the maps on the back wall over there, shows those two concepts. John will be pulling them up on the screen if not. I don't know how I'm gonna do this. I'll have to, hard to point and talk into a microphone at the same time. Anyway, you can see County Road 77 here on the right. Hazelwood is off into the left upper corner. And you'll see that we show a concept road that makes a connection between Hazelwood Drive where it leaves off now at Commons Drive. And it will tie in at this intersection with this little stop road that goes off what most are probably familiar with as being the old airport. This is the Joe Hall project that we're referring to. If you've driven by there, you've seen, probably noticed the trees that are being taken down and so forth, and the construction that's happening there. So this was really the first idea that most of us had of how to make that extension. There are some concerns with that. If you notice the closeness of Joe's project to the right-of-way for that road, it's kind of an issue. A couple things that have brought this project forward are Joe's project. The other one is the intersection on 371. There's been some accidents there recently. They seem to be getting a little more severe, so we're taking a look at that. If there will be any modification of that intersection, maybe it'll close altogether. We don't know that yet. That's something that will come from the state. But as part of that, we wanted to provide another access to 371 plus the parcels of property along there that are currently served by 371. Over lumber, there's a couple of accesses there that may have to close. In that event, this road would serve those parcels. And I don't know, Joe or Mark, do you have anything to add to the concept here as it's shown?
No, and obviously both concepts that are out there will have to deal with the wetlands that's there. The other, I'm sorry, I put that there on hold. The other concern is it will be the area back there as far as relief goes. But either concept will go through the same area generally. There are some possible issues with structures that are already been built. Mark, anything else?
No, as I said, I mean, the primary thing will be access off of 77 will, have to go through a commercial property that's already been developed. But, and the biggest part, Joe did get the
the 2001, MinDOT, when they were, here at the 2 meetings ago, they mentioned they had a corridor access study going all the way from Baxter to Nisswa, dated back from 2001. But, Joe got a copy of that, and it was interesting that, they're looking at the closes, these accesses, as Tom mentioned, and it was actually back between the towing company and the church property is where they were actually, way back in 2001, looking at a full intersection there, with all these being closed. In other words, getting almost a half mile away, between that stoplight and then the stoplight now that serves County 18.
I think a lot of time has passed since that, but generally it does coincide with what their projection, looking through the silver ball, was back then, as far as indicating what would be a concern. The other thing was to make sure that this is being lined up with the Hazelwood Drive extension south on the other side. And then I guess the dealing with it's called a back service road. So hopefully there might be some participation in that with the state. Another reason we're looking at it.
Right, the state had mentioned that if those accesses are closed or modified, that they would likely participate in the cost of constructing this backage road. One other thing to make note of, at this intersection, a couple of years ago when the county started looking at their project that they're currently finishing up on 1377, they had shown a roundabout here and another roundabout, I can't read it, at the top of the map. This would accommodate that, or would coordinate with that when and if that's ever built. John, you want to show the next? All right. Thanks, Joe. So I think the thing to notice here is instead of coming up at an angle here, we're coming straight across and coming and tying into Commons Drive at a right angle. I think this might be a little more preferential to the property owners in this area. It would serve the purpose. You'd have a little bit of a slowdown, obviously, with the two right angles. In this area, it's mostly the same. Just a variation on a theme. It really does about the same thing. Again, we would have, we believe we would have some cost participation with the state. One other thing, this particular version probably lends itself to a little better is if, John, if you could show me that next slide. Yeah. So one of our committee members had an idea of, maybe making an extension, right here is where that last concept picture left off, possibly extending that to Lower Roy Lake Road. That would do a few things. If our recycling moves out here, we're going to, we would have quite a bit of increased truck traffic for that site. And then the other thing to be aware of is this is a state pit here. Our recycling would actually be here. The state hauls snow out there. They occasionally use that as a staging area for their construction projects along 371. And so one of the things that ends up happening is they end up going through this more residential area here on Lower Roy Lake Road. I think there'd be some benefit to having a straighter road that isn't impeded with quite so much residential growth already in place. you know, they could plan accordingly to this road if it was at least planned now. I don't know when we would actually construct this. If we could get MinDOT to participate in the entire construction, may happen sooner if need be. We would obviously have to talk to some landowners about this possibility, but this is certainly an option that we could consider as part of the Hazelwood extension process. Dill, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, being this was your idea. But,
Well, about the only thing is, I think the city already owns a large portion of the right of way. So you wouldn't have to purchase right of way.
from here to here.
Yeah. I just think it would provide access to that entire area over there for fire, police, and the whole works. And if you are going to end up putting the garbage collection area there and so forth, that would get all that traffic off of the residential area where it is now.
Couple things to also be aware of. A lot of you are familiar with Joe Hall's business. Copper Creek has some property up here. They have a fair amount of truck traffic that would probably take advantage of this. You also have Rory Stumhall's pit there that would likely use that. And then there's one or two other contractors with heavy equipment that come in and go out of there. We get a lot of truck traffic, obviously our plows and other things, but we also have cell tower maintenance vehicles that come and go. This road would probably make that more convenient for them as well. So, with that, I guess those are the two concepts we're currently looking at to extend Hazelwood Drive. Are there any comments or questions on what you've seen so far?
Is any of that area a concern being lowland?
Yes. As you can see, when I drew this in, I kind of jogged it around, this being one. And then on those other two concepts, you can go back to either one, John, be fine. Either one is fine, those two from WSN. Yep, that one's fine. Here's our other wetland of concern right here. And you know, those contours are fairly steep, so there's, you know, there's quite a change in elevation here. That would have to be worked out.
Pull that up, you can see the profile on the bottom a little bit, just to give you a reference as to the contour relief, and then both of them are about the same too, so not either of the two options doesn't lend itself to any of a better destruction of the property to get through.
With that option there with the 90-degree corner, would you keep the turns coming off of 371, or would you still connect those to that proposed road?
That would be mostly up to MinDOT.
Okay.
I don't know if the city would make a recommendation on that. The main reason we were looking at that, and we brought it to their attention, is we had a business owner in the industrial park across on the north side of 371 who brought this to our attention and would like something done with that intersection, feels it's dangerous. That's what brought that up. And then at the same time, Joe Hall was looking to construct his new business there. So both of those things put together, this concept of a backage road is not new. It actually predates my employment here, so it's more than probably 15 years old, maybe even a lot older than that, the idea of this package. But regardless of whether or not that closed, I think we could make that work. We may modify that, maybe just the median closes between the north and southbound lanes. And so that you would exit off of Hazelwood right to go south, or if you're coming from the north, you could exit off of 371 to the right on Hazelwood. Those are a couple of options for that. And I guess we would probably be looking for opinions from any of the members on that if you want to offer it, or if you want to make a recommendation as a committee to the city council to make it to the state. We certainly could do that too.
Well, my understanding on this whole concept is that the reason why we're mainly talking about this is to limit the amount of access onto 371, since it is dangerous. And by limiting that, then it would mean that MnDOT would possibly give a fair amount of percentage of the cost.
Right, that's the participation that Mark and Joe and I were talking about mainly came because we have expressed that we would be open to the idea of closing those intersections, or at least modifying them to make them safer.
So who's actually going to be talking with MnDOT about this?
I know, Joe, you've had some conversation with them already.
Mark and I both had conversations, and then they sent us the report that we looked at. Like I said, Mark, that was 2001.
Yes.
So working off that report a little bit, they do have some ideas of closing that intersection to begin with back then, to limit the distance between that and 77 and 13, obviously. Some of the stacking and other things that go on. And then reconfiguring or adding a different intersection farther north. When Tom talked about the 90s that we have there, you know, obviously if that, the second, or this option went through, that would work nicely off of coming off 77 and not having to come off that intersection. And right now, and even if it was a 90 and 90 there for that one, all that traffic has to go through what's sort of a residential / commercial area all the way back for all the items that he was discussing earlier. So I think that closing that intersection and putting 90s in there is probably a swap with what's happening there already. So it lends both concepts as fairly feasible, or being the one with your idea to move that forward later is probably a better contingency.
Well, the gentleman from MnDOT had mentioned that it could be fairly substantial what that could be contributed if we were to take out some of those accesses. And I was curious what that, if it really is substantial or not. And I would like to know.
It's some of the programs that they've arranged with that, they've paid for all the construction.
They pay for all the construction then?
I believe not the engineering.
Land acquisition is the big one they won't pay for.
Right.
Either.
The city would be doing that, but yeah, that's good. We put something, the city, not looking for it, but you give Joe kind of a direction. If one of these two options is more preferable, then we'd like to advance that along a little further, and then then the city would take the first run and pass MnDOT, get their input, and then what would you want to see closed to get a major portion of the construction, participated in cost of that state. So
it's positive because that was part of their earlier planning for the area to begin with. So
If we're to close off those, if all of those access points to 371 were to close off, do we have any sort of traffic study that would show how much traffic would then be diverted down onto 77? How many extra cars per day or per given period of time would be on 77 that are now going out onto 371 and not in that intersection?
I would say it's probably minimal. The Boberg lumber is obviously not a functioning business that I'm aware of right now. Whatever traffic is on Hazelwood currently would be added to it. But I think that's a safer position for anybody coming off of
Right.
Hazelwood or even entering onto it to use the stoplight there.
But I guess it's a good question. So I think one thing we could do, Rob Hall with the county, they looked at traffic counts and they kind of, when they laid out, because that's one reason they actually, when they looked at that, it was actually just going to be a center turn lane, and then that expanded to include, right turn lanes, and they have, they've got their I'll say their little jury rig into the Holiday gas station and then the quick, so I mean, they expanded it quite a bit and, and took it, I'll say actually to a 5-lane concept being, the 2 through lane, center lane, and a right turn lane onto and a right turn lane off, so. But I mean, that request could be made to Crow Wing County, because if you're gonna go to the, if this goes to the state, if you are connecting to a county road, not a state road, so yes, you're gonna pass it by Mr. Hall and Mr. Bray, just to get input back from them. As Tom said, though, if you actually did a traffic count on Hazelwood Drive, all I'll just say would be probably a sub 200 vehicles a day. Whereas 77, when we did that, you're talking 5,000 to 6,000 vehicles a day. So the impact of, this would be all, probably less than 5% of what existing traffic is already in 77. Yes, if you were bringing in a couple thousand vehicles a day, that would get their attention.
Right.
Yep. So, look, your question is good because from the standpoint, it's something that you will be running by the county also, along with MnDOT, just to make sure you have their buy-in. Because as Tom said, it may then, get the county thinking about, well, do they want to advance the roundabout that was in their concept of WSB for that intersection? Because they have to, it shows that this is preliminary, but if it happens, the entrance into Wendy's is changed. I mean, that's something the county will say, well, we're not going to have a major street intersection and a business intersection, 103 feet apart. We're going to, the city will be getting input from the county, how they want to help with that intersection.
I think also a roundabout would improve access to Holiday. And that really has not been solved at all, by what they did.
No, they just painted their big white door area to give you better,
Yeah.
maybe, still doesn't make it any easier, just maybe a few less conflicts or.
Well, they could run a road right down from the roundabout down to Holiday and get rid of that problem they have.
Hey, Tom?
Yes. I guess that, go ahead.
Yes.
So if we were to go with that concept that Dill came up with, where we were tying in a northbound lane to that 90-degree intersection, how much traffic would we get with that addition that would then dump out into 77 as well? That's what I was concerned about than what's actively going out on these three.
So what's going out of Hazelwood Drive now? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, for the residential area and any heavy commercial traffic that would potentially be going down from the recycling center, from any of the construction that's going on up there, how much of that traffic would then come down off of this road onto 77?
That would
as well?
increase.
That would.
But that intersection which they just did, that's built to handle that. So especially if they put a roundabout there.
I was more concerned that, especially in the summertime with as many people as up here, if we put a roundabout there on 77, that you'd end up with just one big massive knot of people tied up coming off of that going north and south, and then also going east and west between the traffic light and that roundabout.
If this road was put in and that intersection was closed, you're gonna reduce a lot of the turning movements on 371, so it's gonna be a safety issue there. He indicated that 77 already is probably can handle the additional traffic.
Okay.
So, and the amount of cars that are coming are still gonna come down. They would do a right on and come up to the intersection. So the intersection's still gonna be taxed the same amount of cars.
Sure.
So they're gonna have a right hand. The only other issue there is a left-hand turn movement from Hazelwood Drive extension that we did on 77. And that could very possibly be not permanent because of the roundabout that maybe can move forward at some time. So,
Okay.
and that would take care of that.
Okay, thank you.
So anybody else have any more questions or comments?
Well, I think if we're considering doing that future expansion going to the north, I think it makes a whole lot more sense to do it on that 90-degree road.
Yeah, I think
I think you've almost bought into that, right? If you're gonna extend it to the north, that you're gonna do it with that 90-degree.
There really wouldn't be another way to be able to join that at a good angle if
It
you didn't.
wouldn't, it wouldn't be nearly as efficient, I don't think, to do it with the first concept. That first concept was really our first flush at it. Those of us who were talking about it at that time didn't have the idea that Dill did of making the connection to Lower Roy. That really changed things quite a bit. I think one other benefit to this 90-degree concept that I see is the properties closest to 371 aren't as impacted as much by the road. I think they would see a greater value to them. Obviously, Joe's project wouldn't be impacted at all really anymore. So he likely would prefer this too. And I do think that the greater good for the city is that we're creating that straight shot to our government services of the recycling, the sewer plant, the maintenance garage.
Keeps all that heavy equipment out of residential areas.
Does that open up some additional development potential there on that lot to the south of the cities?
I think it might. I can't speak for any of the property owners, but I think this concept definitely makes, areas in here more desirable.
I'm talking about like extending Hazelwood north to the cities.
Bill's concept.
Other than,
Well, you're going through two parcels, right?
Yeah.
Does that increase some development potential on that one to the south of the cities?
Right here.
Yeah, right in there.
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing
And then
too,
maybe here as well. This currently isn't owned by the city.
with that concept added to the second concept plan that we had, excuse me, all the traffic that are doing the 90-degree turns right now that would have to, that the commercial vehicles and such that would come along through 77 and make that turn would be, those are the main vehicles. So if that concept went in eventually, that takes all that burden off those 90-degree turns that we're talking about right at Hazelwood Extension and where that right on, right off is right at this moment.
yeah, that's a great point, Joe.
So a lot of it is if this would to go through at some point makes the turning movements and the situation with the 90s less permanent, more of a.
Mhm.
One kind of a caveat or a sidebar to this. We talked about the bicycle trail that runs along Lower White Lake Road. We also have the beginnings of a bicycle trail at the intersection of 371, 77, and 13. I guess I'd like to know if anybody has any thoughts on extending the bicycle trail down this road too, if it was built.
You mean to the west?
From Lower Roy Lake Road to 77. Currently, the plan, I believe, and Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not involved with the bike trail as maybe you are. It's going to extend along Lower Roy Lake Road, come down Hazelwood, and then head up to the tunnel that heads under 371. But down here at the 13 and 77 intersection, we did make provisions when that intersection was built this past summer for a bike path to eventually cross 371. So this road, if it was built, if it was built with a bicycle trail, would bring them right to the Wendy's intersection and allow them to more easily cross it if we ever decide to build a trail heading east towards the camps, things like that, or possibly back toward the west to Grandview as well. It would create a loop another bicycle loop in town that I think would be an attraction, so I think there would be some interest in that. Not sure if anybody has an opinion on that, or.
I think that's a good idea.
Well,
It does fit with our
if
comp.
that extension were to happen even without a bicycle trail, you know, at that point, you're gonna take a lot of the traffic off of Lower Roy Lake Road or the trail part. So, you know, obviously that's gonna make that road safer for the trail that's gonna be placed there.
Well, another option would be to go from where you turn on to Lower Roy Lake Road off of 77 with a bike trail, just go straight east to this intersection. You know, you do the same thing. And Grandview has a lot of pedestrian traffic, bicyclers and so on that stretch anyway, and there's really no place for them to go now.
Right.
It's dangerous.
This would be a good way for them to go north.
What kind of crossing in the concept, you know, initial concepts across 371 would you be looking at for the bicycle?
It's there.
It's already built. The width is there. If you are familiar with the bank property, you can see the bike trail there actually extends out a little ways to the east.
Okay, so it's just in that grade, just,
Yeah, actually, there's even a section of it alongside Wendy's there too.
okay.
So we put that in obviously because of the construction that they were doing, not wanting to come back later on. There was economies of scale to do it with their project. But we currently don't have any plans that I'm aware of to make the connection from 77 Lower Roy, where the bicycle trail will head up Lower Roy. We don't have a connection from that point to the intersection by Wendy's. And then once we get much further east of the bank, there isn't a trail planned yet heading east.
Do you
Just
know, Tom,
ideas.
is there right of way already provided now when they're redoing that
On
on 13?
on 13. I know there's more right of way, that the county widened their right of way, and I do think that they're allowing for the idea of a bike trail. Whether it's separated or not, I couldn't answer that question, but I do think that they had that idea in mind, that there would be a bike trail there at some point.
So
in the future.
there will be right of way already there.
I think,
for the-
yeah, I think the right of way in that area is 100 feet as opposed to, I think it was 66 before.
Mhm.
And Tom, one of the things, I mean, the county is, their plans though for 13 now include 6.5-foot paved shoulders. So it's gonna be night and day compared to what it is for what Joe Public
Yeah.
feels like they feel safe. So I mean, that's probably why it was actually Matt Hill, when he was looking at to push that to get in front of the bank, in front of the church, just knowing that, that is gonna, people are gonna feel, well, they're gonna bike to that intersection, a lot more than they have in the past. Just because the county is taking some of the curves out, but they are also widening it. And, and putting,
And that'll actually tie in at Lake Hubert, their store, with the Paul Bunyan Trail. So it's gonna happen.
Excuse me. Yeah, and just kind of a heads up, if anybody in the group isn't aware, that 13 project is underway now. And their anticipated completion is just after the 4th of July, or substantial completion anyway. Total, I think, end of August. They're looking at having the seating and everything pretty much done by then. So I guess next steps on this are, if we prefer one of the concepts, I guess, or if we would want to have time to think about it, we can table it till our next meeting, or we could recommend that we move forward with a concept. Does anybody have a thought on that? Or?
If we do recommend that we go forward with this concept, what's the next step?
I guess I would defer to Mark or Joe. Do you have any?
well, Joel, let's say we're looking for comments. You'll probably get some feedback from the public on this, but we want the city to really try to make a direction on which option, because then we would further refine it, because we have to come up with some cost estimates.
Sure.
And Joe, Joe started with a profile, but he's got to look at drainage and a lot of other things. So, one of the next steps is once you have an option, we want to further refine it to put a general cost to it in a little more detail than was done 3 months ago. And Mark just did, $520,000 on a lineal, when we laid it out just with a hand sketch that Tom did. So, but then, a little more formal drawing too, that can be done. That's what the city can use them to have their first discussions with property owners and then kind of send that official first offer to MnDOT. This is what we're considering, what do you, what's your time frame and what can we look at for any cost participation?
I think as a staff recommendation, I would say I would go with that right angle concept would be what I would prefer to look at. And then this extension would be an option. So we could at least get the cost on that, even if it's way in the future that we look at that. We at least have a better idea what that's going to cost and what it would look like more professionally drawn than what I have there, obviously. So.
I agree, unless you find something, when you start putting a sharper pencil to it, something that you're not finding right now. I think the second one with a 90-degree angle fits better with what we'd like to do long-term with the bike trail, and then also with diverting commercial traffic away from the residential area, Lower Roy. So I propose going with the second one.
I think too, what we'll do is make these concepts available to some other people too that would have the property owners possibly. See if we can get some feedback on these ideas from them as Joe's refining it.
Well, and that, like, talking about the next steps, my thought would have been to, it's not to bring this to a full-blown preliminary feasibility study, but to bring it farther along with better design, that we can pin down the properties. We've got them pretty good, but pin down the properties and do the conversations with the homeowners, the property owners. And I think after seeing that, if that was incorporated with it, you could see the whole long-term project, even though maybe only half of it would go through, but that decision could be made in conjunction.
Would it make sense to do both at once?
I would think so, and I kind of like that idea, especially with our, the recycling talk that we're talking about. A lot of that traffic is already there. The county traffic has been there a long time. It only increases every winter. They haul more snow out there than they did the year before. It makes a lot of sense there, and like I had said earlier, there's not a lot of development there's no development along there right now. So we're not going around anything. There's nothing that we would have to buy right away if we waited, or, the right away would likely be less expensive if we.
Yeah, even if you were to purchase the right of way and put it in a gravel road for, a shorter term to do it in conjunction with the work you're doing on the Hazelwood.
Yeah.
The idea of that, the extension of the other road too, and if you worked it with it, it's a little bit more of a bigger package to offer to MnDOT. So when we're having those discussions, we can see where that's going to make a decision to whether or not there's going to be more funding to extend the whole road or we cut it back.
Because then the purpose is more or less to tie Lower Lake Road down to 77 with a little branch road coming off to meet Hazelwood.
Right.
I think it costs a lot less to do it all at once than to bring crews out twice.
Right. So I think with that, I think we'd be looking for a motion to have Joe improve the drawings for our next meeting and
I'll make
some of the follow-up that he just discussed.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Okay, moving on to item 6. Bass Lake Road Development Opportunity. I presented a couple of maps here. The Planning Commission the Planning and Zoning Administrator has had a couple of concepts presented to her for development, and those are the maps that I'm showing you here. As part of that, we would need to take a look at roads in the area, if there's any need for improvement. I brought up the idea of a possible connection that I show on this map between there and Bass Lake Road. The reason that is coming up is we've had a long history of maintenance expense with Bass Lake Road. It's not well constructed and it's in a poor location. When this development was proposed, it had shown roads that serve the development that come a long way towards making that connection. What they had shown, they have a road coming along and down to about this point, leaving us with a short section that we would have to figure out a way to construct if the city were interested in making that connection. Now, there are some folks here who live on Roy Lane who don't like the idea, and there's other people with Bass Lake Road here who do like the idea. These are some things we have to explore. And so I'm just bringing this up as a preliminary discussion on this idea. Wanted you to be able to see what the development would look like. As I understand it, those applications haven't been presented yet. I think they're coming to the Planning Commission next week. Are you with the development? You are. Could you introduce yourself and kind of explain what you're looking to do?
No. Hi, I'm Kevin McCormick with Land Design Solutions. We've looked at this with staff at many different directions, and they've all been going very well. The latest one that we put up, do you have a copy of that one? The proposal that we've sent in. No matter what we do with this, we'd like to try and get a zoning change. But we've gone from 18 lots down to 11 lots. We're even prepared to go less. We actually looked at making not the connection, but we looked at trying to come down towards the Roy Lake side. There we go. There we go. Down by the lake lots. There is one area on this property on existing grades that you can see about a 15% grade. The rest of these are very, very steep slopes. And they're not bluffs, but we're into the 29-30% range. We actually abandoned the idea. What happens, what we see with it is where are we going to put the water? How are we going to control the water? We would lose lots, and the lots wouldn't be very conducive. We actually tried bringing a cul-de-sac up through to service them, and we even thought, somebody could connect this, but it's not a short distance. To get out of that steep slope, we're looking anywhere from 750 to 900 feet at a huge additional cost, especially in those steep slopes. We're looking at an additional $50,000. What we thought would be best with this, and this is what we're bringing to the Planning Commission, is it does give you guys a little bit of opportunity here in Bass Lake Road. Would get 66 feet of right-of-way in this plat. So it gives you the opportunity to do some improvements to Bass Lake Road. This was our thinking, by the way. And then all of the development portions of that road up there would be on the flat areas where we don't have to deal with the water. And these lots would be, lots 1 through 7 are all over 2-acre lots. Lot 8 is just shy of 2 acres. And then the riparian lots 9, 10, 11, they're 40,000. But as you can see with the contours that are in there, we don't have to deal with this water issue or the road issue in this particular format. And the other thing is this was always set to be a private road, not a public road. We don't want to turn it over to the city. We are looking down the road. Everybody says private roads. So we would design this with a 66-foot right of way. It would be an outlot. But the intention here is to keep it rural, keep it small, and keep the advantageous portion of turning over the city somewhere down the future. So the pros of this design is it does give you the 66 feet along Bass Lake Road. And I'm not saying that'd be an easy project. You've got wetlands on one side and you've got a steep bank on the other, but it leaves you the mechanism to do it. And then the other portion, again, you know, it leaves 66-foot roadways up on top of the hill where we don't run into water issues and things like that. And it does promote for the future of someone wanted to petition for the city to take over it, the room is there. So again, the intention was to kind of fit to the community that's there, low volume, big lots. And that was kind of our intention with that. So thank you very much. Now, if you have any other questions, I can certainly help or try to help. Thank you.
Do you have anything to add?
No, nothing to add, but if there's any questions, I can certainly chime in.
So I guess as I see it, with Mr. McCormick's addition, you know, obviously that connection might be very difficult to construct, but I would also point out any improvement of Bass Lake Road is going to be very expensive too. So I think what I would like to do is have some conversations with the engineer and see where it makes sense for us to move forward from the city's point of view here. If the connection makes no sense, you know, what kind of an expense would we be looking at to improve Bass Lake Road so it could be paved? We would need to look at a cost participation with the city of Lakeshore. If it were an improvement of Bass Lake Road, because mostly the population using Bass Lake Road is from the city of Lakeshore. There's also a second development that would be possibly using Bass Lake Road further to the north. I have a smaller drawing of that pinned on the wall. I don't think I have that for you, John. A few more homes in that unit, but also they're out of the swamp area, their access. But that whole road is currently gravel, and we do have a substantial amount of repair expense with it. So, yes, go ahead.
Where does that street tie, what does that tie into over there on the, I don't know, I guess it's on this, right in here. What is this?
That's Roy Lane.
That's Roy Lane right there, okay.
And Roy Lane is currently city road,
Yes, it's a
Right.
public city road.
public road.
Was that
Bass
just,
Lake-
that was
Bass
just
Lake
paved,
Road
wasn't
is
it?
too, but it was never improved. It's just rough gravel road.
Roy Lane was just paved, wasn't it?
Roy Lane, no, Roy Lane is
Which one is it?
actually near the end of its life as far as the pavement is concerned. Somewhere in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll likely be looking at a project to resurface that.
Okay. Can you bring up that first picture that you had?
You know, on paper, it looks really nice just to make a short jog down to Bass Road. But as the gentleman mentioned, it's a really steep grade. I mean, how would that be addressed, if anything?
That would be my question.
Yeah,
for
sort of like
Seth.
Duluth.
Can it even be done? Maybe it's not even possible.
Yeah.
It looks simple on paper, but maybe it's not possible. If it is possible, is it a project that is cost effective compared to the cost of improving Bass Lake Road? One of the other reasons we were looking at this now is this property had remained undeveloped for a long time, and it's been talked about prior to my starting with the city too, of how could we improve Bass Lake Road, what would it look like? One of the ideas was always to tie into to Roy Lane, this development and the road that they proposed, at least on paper, made it look like that was a possibility. So I would like to at least explore it, eliminate it as a possibility if it isn't a possibility, so that future councils, groups don't have to look at it again. And then we could make a recommendation to either explore the connection further or make a recommendation that it's time to do an improvement project on Bass Lake Road.
If the city improved Bass Lake Road from Upper Royal Lake Road down, to Lake Shore, how long a stretch are we talking?
I
Roughly?
don't have an exact distance. I would say it's in the neighborhood of a half mile to a mile.
Really? And that's all swamp on the
Most
west
of it-
side of it,
Most
yeah.
of it's swamp, yeah. We would look at either, you'd have to add fill,
Yeah.
or you'd have to try to move into
The
the
slope,
bank,
yeah.
which, I don't know. There would be other questions. What are we allowed to do? Is there any implications with the DNR as far as filling, cutting in the bank? I don't know. That would be a question also that would have to be answered.
Yeah, I drove down that road today, and that bank is really right there at the road already.
Which is, yeah.
I don't know if you could really cut into that at all.
I don't know. I think, my maintenance staff, they're down there all the time cutting trees and maintaining this. And so one of the ideas that we said is, it'd be nice if we cut at least a little bit into it. One because we always have dirt that slopes into it, trees that fall into it.
Mhm.
So one way or another, we'd have to address that situation if we were going to pave it. The other thing is it's not stable. Each year, we trade off with the city of Lakeshore buying gravel. We add about 4 inches of gravel every year. Roughly $5,000 just to add that, and then the grading expenses on top of that. So it's an expensive piece of road to maintain as it is now.
Right.
And even with that maintenance, the satisfaction of those using it is very low. It generates a lot of complaint calls to my office, even right after we've done maintenance. It's not up to the standard I think people are expecting in this area.
And I noticed that all the low points are these huge potholes, gravel holes.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately, right now, with the frost coming out, we can't repair that in any meaningful way. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, if it warms up and dries up, the city of Lakeshore provides most of the grading there. So if they haven't been contacted already, we'll be contacting them to ask them to grade that.
So what is the status of this? Is this a preliminary plat or what is this?
Brittany, can you speak to that?
At this time, it's just a sketch plan review. The 1599 clock is not started yet on the preliminary plat.
So who is behind this? Who's proposing?
The gentleman here.
Okay.
On behalf
So
of.
you are the developer.
I'm the designer and the survey company that's handling that. Josh Savage of Home Pride, the actual owner of that,
Okay,
or soon to be owner.
yeah.
Who would be fronting the cost for this?
That would need to be determined. Right now, I'm just looking at the concepts. I think probably at this point, I would need to have further conversations with our engineering staff outside of the meeting to see where we would head from now. So I think what I would like to do is, I've introduced the ideas that we're going to be looking at, some of the concerns with it. I think I would come back to our next meeting with some of those questions or some answers to those questions.
What would the life expectancy be of that road if we did pave it?
Using the standard that we, as a city, use now, we're trying to get 40 years out of a road once it's built. So now going through that swamp section, I would say it would be light on that because no matter what we do with it, there's just always issues with that. The closest analog I would have to that is Clark Lake Road. We have a section of paved road in the swamp, and I'd say about every 3 to 5 years, I have Anderson Brothers do a major patch in there, and I want to say we spend $15,000 to $30,000 at a crack fixing that. And this would be a bigger section in the swamp than that. So we could be spending significantly more.
And what do we spend per year patching that road now?
Right now, it's gravel, so we haul in about 4 inches of gravel. And we're spending our city's portion of it, we spend $5,000 every other year for gravel. And then there's grading and other expenses on there, but it's not as much, but also, like I said, people using the road aren't happy with that. And I think what we're looking for is if we were to do the Bass Lake Road option, we would have to sit down with the city of Lakeshore and work out some kind of an agreement to share in the cost of the improvement of that road.
Tom, how much of this is on Lakeshore property of the road?
Unfortunately, that's where the problem lies. The Lakeshore portion of the road is already paved. The portion we're looking at here is solely in the city of Nisswa.
It's solely.
Who's also doing the space, the north development? Are you also doing that for them or no?
That's Mr. Tom Steffens.
Okay. And so this is really not part of trying to tie anything in.
It really isn't. The only reason I brought that up is it would add traffic to Bass Lake Road.
Oh, okay.
I guess it bothers me a little bit that the city would be bearing the expense of figuring out whether this is feasible, the engineering expense. This could be happening all over town where the city ends up doing a lot of this research, cost analysis, for everybody's ideas. So that bothers me a little bit here. I don't know what we're talking about.
It could be that these are separate projects. The only thing I think could tie into this developer's project would be if we were looking to actually make that short connection.
Yeah.
I think then we would want to talk directly with them and figure out if there's who eats what of the cost of that. But I think if we're talking about improving Bass Lake Road, that probably doesn't affect this development at this time because they're going to be accessing Roy Lane. Bass Lake Road then becomes a separate issue that we have in the city of Lakeshore. And unfortunately, because this property is developing and accessing Roy Lane, and the only landowners that have any building along Bass Lake Road would be this new Tom Steffens development. The rest of it, there's nothing really there to assess a cost for building a road.
Do you have any idea how many residences there are in the Lakeshore part of it?
I don't have an exact number by any means, but I would guess. Thank you.
There are 37 residences on.
37?
Thank you.
Could I make a couple comments in regards to the intersection?
I think if once the committee has kind of gotten their business out, we'll make time for comments if that works. Anybody else have anything?
So at this point, just so I understand the process, the clock hasn't started ticking on this yet, right?
Correct.
So now it would go to the city council? What's the next step in this?
The next step for the development.
Just simply the development. The development simply alone by itself, road issue aside, there is a rezone coming up next week for this parcel. And the plan that you have in front of you is assuming the rezone is approved. At the same meeting, there's a sketch plan review. And then in May, we would do preliminary plat, assuming everything goes the way it's supposed to. Final plat would be in June.
So for this committee, as far as this development is concerned, the only question that we have at this time is a connection to Bass Lake Road feasible or not? That might be a pretty simple question for our engineer to answer. And if it were feasible and it was something we wanted to pursue further, I think then we would explore some costs with the developer at that time. If it's not feasible, I'm not even sure what we would be talking about to figure that out, if it's reasonable to make that connection. I think probably we would be looking for a proposal coming back from the engineer for our meeting in April.
If we did make this connection, how much extra traffic would that put out on Bass Lake Road? And how much quicker would that deteriorate that road?
If we made this connection?
Yeah.
For Bass Lake Road, it would be an improvement because they could access Roy Lane. I don't think it would, I think most of that area is developed as it's going to get, that it's servicing back there. It would have a direct impact on Roy Lane. Obviously, they would see a great, pretty sizable increase in their traffic.
You mentioned that Roy Lane is fairly near the end of its life cycle.
It's getting there. One of the things we're going to be looking at is in 2025, the city does another road bond, similar to what we had just completed. That's where we had done Hazelwood and some of the other roads you've probably noticed that we've resurfaced in the last couple of years. In 2025, we'll be looking to do another road bond like that. And the Upper Roy area and the roads that branch off from it that haven't been done recently would be looked at to possibly be part of that next road bond. And certainly Roy Lane is one of those. The pavement it's in decent shape as far as it's not broken up badly, other than there's one low spot where you first enter onto it. But it does have, it's very weathered. And so I would say in the next 10 years, it will probably start to break up. So we would likely at least take a strong look at it, especially when we have paving crews in the area working on Upper Roy. And Upper Roy is probably in worse shape. So I see there's a good possibility we would be doing a project in that area.
And it seemed like that road was not very large,
It's narrow.
It's narrow. So that would probably have to be expanded if this addition was put on, or even if not, I wonder.
If we don't make a connection, I don't know that we would expand it a whole lot. Depends on the impact of these added homes. I would have to take a look what the right-of-way is. I'm not sure if this is a 66-foot right-of-way. I think it is. If it's not, it might be harder to widen it from what it is.
And it sounds like that then with the, 36 houses in Lakeshore? 37, and then 11 here. That'd be 48. And then there's a couple on the Nisswa side too, I'd imagine.
Yeah, there's 3 homes that are on the Nisswa side of the line on Bass Lake Road.
Basically like 51 households that would be added onto that road then.
Could be, yes.
Possibly.
So I think there's probably not any action I would look at this time. I don't know if you need any action from us yet at this point, Brittany. What I would suggest is that I have some conversations with the engineer following the meeting. We look at this embankment, if it's even possible to make a connection. If it were, we'd come back with what the next steps would be. And then the other thing we would look at the same time is if the connection is off the table, won't work, what would be the next steps for pursuing an improvement of Bass Lake Road? Any more comments from the committee before I turn it over to residents? If you'd like to step up, sir, up to the podium so we can.
I could talk about nothing here.
It shows up on a recording, if you wouldn't mind. Just introduce yourself and.
Yeah, my name is Bruce Olson, and my wife and I have lived on Roy Lane for almost 40 years. Over the recent years, we've seen an increase in traffic on Upper Roy Lake Road, as I'm sure all of you are aware of. I'd like to make 4 points in relationship to the intersection of Upper Roy Lake Road and Roy Lane. The intersection as you're coming from Nisswa has a blind approach onto Roy Lane as you make a left-hand turn. In the winter, it's excessively icy due to drainage and melting and the slope of Upper Roy Lake Road. In the summer, you're blinded by the sunlight in the late afternoon. So that makes that intersection extremely dangerous all year long. And by adding more traffic on that intersection, you know, who knows what can happen. By rerouting Bass Lake Road onto Roy Lane, it will add an additional 37 residences that we talked about on an already narrow street and making this intersection more dangerous. And my question is, would there be a study on the traffic and evaluation on safety on this proposal?
If we
it
move
was-
forward with it, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Either one, yes.
The other development has 14 homes and it
Could you step up to the mic and just say who you are?
it's not just the 11 homes developed by this, surveyed by this man, but if the other development starts, that's 14 homes. So you have to add both of those in, which will be on Bass Lake Road.
That northern development.
It's
like
not-
wouldn't, there would be a stub of Bass Lake Road left.
Okay, but I'm just saying that there's more than 11 homes. There's,
Potentially, but I.
right, that's what I'm saying, if that other one becomes,
I think if that other development that I have shown there, if that were built, would access Lower Roy Lake Road from Bass Lake Road.
right, that's what I'm saying. I live off Bass Lake Road.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
So-
I misunderstood. I thought you were on Roy Lane.
No, he was.
Okay, thank you.
So you have to add those in if that becomes something that.
Yes, yep.
I've had both my shots, so, and I don't have much of a voice. I'm Jack Overby and I live on Roy Lake Road. And I'd like what I'm hearing here, it would seem logical to me to continue with Bass Lake Road because of the number of cars coming through every day. And if they take that new road, they're going to end up in my backyard and my two neighbors, and that would definitely have an effect on my home. I don't want to sound selfish, but it would affect all of the homes, and it would be a financial problem for us, I feel. So I would encourage you to look at the Bass Lake option, and if there's any way to do that, I think it would be helpful for the people that lived on that road and for us.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anybody else? You wouldn't mind stating your name for?
Sure. My name is John Leedy. I also live on Roy Lake Road, but I also own 7 properties right at the corner of Roy Lake Road and Roy Lane. So I'm right in that corner, right in that intersection that has been referred to as dangerous, which I clearly can see that as well. But certainly as a homeowner on that piece of property, I'm very concerned about both the developments and the amount of potential traffic that's going to go through there that I will have to witness every day that we're at our cabin, at our house there. So just very concerned about the increased traffic. So
Thank you. Anybody else? Hearing nothing, I guess I'll proceed as I had stated earlier. I'll be following up with the engineer on our 2 options, and we'll have a report back at our April meeting. I'll give everybody a chance to filter out for a minute here.
You know where this is?
Yeah.
It's like those.
that's Bass Lake Road. Okay, so then this one is down, further down? Oh, okay. So this is Bass Lake Road here on this. Is that center? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you can see the contours here.
Yeah.
Well,
I had to go about 5 miles an hour.
it's a sand road basically. Right. This must be then Roy Lake here, and
Right.
this is where Teddy Doolin lives in here. Yeah, okay.
Right.
Okay, so this is behind them.
Yeah, this is behind.
Okay.
This won't affect that at all.
No.
It- the,
I wonder who owns that.
I don't know. That's being developed.
Seems like they're sticking in an awful lot of
Yeah.
places.
I just heard.
All right, continuing on, item 7, looking for updates on lift station number 3 and the wastewater treatment plant. Mark?
All right, thanks, Tom. I don't know if Aspen Construction has started on lift station 3. They set up the dewatering about a week and a half ago, 10 days ago. They replaced their pump 3 times, but they finally got it going. So last week, actually on Thursday, they set the lift station wet well base section. It's down on the ground about 22 feet. And they've got, now as of today, they've got the rest of the station set. So that project is proceeding. It will continue for another a good 3 weeks. And then there's going to be a gap because then we have to do our finished paving and everything. And that'll wait till Anderson Brothers has started up that. So I don't know, has anybody heard anything just out in the public or?
Not a word.
Not a word? Okay, so far, like you say, it's
When are they gonna do the boring?
okay, they right now, Grandview had requested that the boring be done after Easter weekend here. So the boring people were out yesterday, Tuesday, to kind of preliminary look at it. So right now that is scheduled for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week.
Really?
Yep, so they're gonna be setting up over on the West Linden intersection with Woodward, is at least what they told, and, and then directional drilling over, and then pulling the pipe back upstream. So that's at least what they laid out with Tony last week, or excuse me, not last week, just yesterday on Tuesday.
Good.
So, but yeah, so they'll be doing that. And they say, and then, and we still have about 3 weeks. Hopefully their contractors anticipate they'll be able to shut down the dewatering here this week. So that will, end the diesel engine running 24/7.
Is it normal to be able to run that dewater water into Gull Lake?
Yes.
I was kind of surprised when I saw that.
Yep. But no, I mean, it's like well water. I mean, you're pumping groundwater out of the ground through sand points.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of muddy, isn't it? I didn't go down to the lake.
No,
Is
no,
it
it's
clear?
not really.
Is it?
No, it's actually, I mean, it's fairly clear water, like you say. I mean, now, if a contractor, I'll say, if he would stir something up right next to it, but that's I mean, if he stirs it up, he's going to impact his sand points and they're going to plug up. So, but no, that is, I mean, now the contractor did get a permit with the DNR to do that. So you just don't run a hose out and dump it into the lake and.
For sure.
It was permitted with the DNR and that was discussed.
So that square manhole that they're gonna put in, is that the valve manhole?
That is the valve vault.
Okay.
Yes, where the check valves and the isolation valves sit for the
And then
two
there's a
pumps.
couple other manholes there, it looks like, or at least one. Is that for the boring, or the boring?
Yes, we have manholes. We have there'll be 2 new manholes there at the intersection of East Linden and Nokomis. One where the directional boring is coming in, and actually where the old lift station is, there'll be a manhole just collecting the 3 different pipes to bring the 1 10-inch pipe over to the new manhole.
I will say they have some pretty husky equipment there, and they do a pretty good job of missing the trees. They got to dodge around all those trees.
Yeah, well, yeah, so when I went and marked all the trees, and Grandview requested if we could leave a couple of them, and I asked Aspen, and they agreed to work around them, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I've talked to the guys down there, and
Okay.
they seem to know what they're doing.
Yep. All right, and then on the wastewater side, we had our monthly construction meeting Wednesday or Thursday of last week. Right now, for the big part of that is we're waiting for the frost to come out of the ground and then road limits to get off, because then US site will be remobilizing, and then we'll start actually the 6.2 acre membrane installation in our pond with the aggregates that were all screened last year. Water balance will probably be during the month of June, within the work, and then we have to work with the MPCA for starting that up. So the project is actually ahead of schedule here, probably a good 3 to 4 weeks. They had a good winter to work at it. Now it's just, they were casting the concrete walls inside the 2 control structures. So Eagle is continuing to work, but typically with just a 2 or 3 man crew here, probably for the next 2 or 3 weeks. As I say, the council actually approved the change order here for all the equipment. So Holden Electric, Thielen, MJ Mechanical, they're putting together their stuff for the, just to complete then the wash bay area that was included in this wastewater project. I don't know if there's any questions on I say we do, we have our meetings the fourth Thursday of every month. So I think it's April, sent you the date. It's May 27th. Anyway, if you're interested in just, on the project or anything, like I say, we meet 10 a.m. out there. So, I mean, I'm not going to give you a grand tour or anything. We're glad to come and listen to the meeting.
When is this?
April 22nd and May 27th. I got the 2 dates mixed
Yeah.
up.
April
I
22nd and May.
Yeah. We meet the fourth Thursday of every month at 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
So just offering, like you say, that's our
Yeah.
monthly construction meetings that we have out there. So, if you have questions or want to be more informed, that, I'd invite you to come to that meeting, and we'll gladly address any questions or let you know what's going on at that time. So is there any questions from the group for me on the wastewater project? All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
Okay, to close out the meeting, just a couple FYIs that you see below. Wolf Chase streetlights. This is a project that was approved by the city council. Power company will be installing those as soon as road conditions allow. That's really the only thing holding them up too. Looking forward to that. I think you're all familiar with the tree in the roundabout that was cut out. I have a gentleman who has offered to replace that for us free of charge. So again, as soon as the road restrictions are off and conditions allow, we'll be looking to transplant a new tree into that spot. Kind of backing up a little bit, this last FYI item, the roundabout project that we talked about earlier at Nokomis and 77. Part of that, we're considering repaving Nokomis, Forest Avenue, Woodward, and East and West Linden. And to do that, we're going to be putting together a survey for these East and West Linden residents to see if there's any improvements other than resurfacing we should be doing, or how those improvements, what and how much should be done. So once I have that put together, I will share that with the committee, so you know what we're asking, and ultimately I'll share the results with you too. So I'm expecting to do that likely in June, the June timeframe, mostly because we have so many seasonal residents there. Be looking to get their input. So.
Just a quick question. I'm not, really familiar with the policies of the city, but for a project like that, where you go and talk to the residents to see if they, potential, needs, are those accessible, or does the city in this one not do that as part of its regular procedures?
Right today, the city of Nisswa does not have a road assessment policy. We don't assess for road projects. What we do allow for is if there's requests for a road project outside of our cycle, we've developed this 40-year cycle for repairing the roads, resurfacing them. If they wanted to say jump ahead in the line or something, they can do that by being assessed for the project at that point. So this will possibly fall under that provision because it's not on our 40-year plan at this time. But there are some conveniences with the construction of the roundabout to do that whole area at one time. So that's some discussions that this group and the council would have to have as far as how the costs would be budgeted for or allowed for.
When you say, you know, in the case of the jumping ahead, it would be accessible.
100%.
100%.
If they make the request, it's on them. Now, the only time that wouldn't be is if there were some known problems we wanted fixed as a city, we might.
That would be an advantage to the city.
Exactly. In this case, because Grandview is such a dominant property owner there, they will likely be participating in the cost to this substantially, so.
Thanks, Tom. Well, I can give Tom a little history too.
Yeah.
You know, 4 years ago, 2017, the council for the road we were just up at, Upper Roy Lake Road, needed work. The city actually, I said, we put together an assessment policy, and it was, actually, council enacted it, and then we looked at Upper Roy Lake Road, and I don't know, Tom, 40 residents show up.
Oh, yeah.
Screaming no, so this is the politics, you've been there, know the history, so they say the council decided not to use, you know, not to utilize their assessments policy that they had actually established 6 months earlier. So that's the history. I mean, you know, many cities have a good track record of assessing. This one really has had no track record of assessing projects in 30 years. I mean, well before Tom and I were around, so that's just the general history of this one.
Where the frontage road was built, you know, just before you hit 29, that's the project Mark's talking about. We had talked about paving that road going all the way back at that time. And because they didn't want to participate in an assessment, we only paved the frontage road that was part of this 371 project. So with that, moving on to my last item of number 8, do any of you have any questions or comments? I know 3 of you are pretty much brand new and probably don't know what to ask yet, but if you, I would say if you have questions or things come to your mind whenever, if you're in the area during business hours, stop in or shoot me an email. I'm glad to answer any questions I can for you. Or if you just want to look at maps or something too, feel free. So with that, I guess I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that. Make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion by Dill, a second. Second by Galen. All in favor? Anybody opposed?